Tonight I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, the beauty of possibility. And who gives us that possibility? Does man or woman? Government? No. Government doesn't do a whole lot of things right, but certainly the government doesn't give us our possibility. God gives it to us. He knew us before we were even conceived. And that's a truth that I hold to particularly strongly because of my own story. And so when I talk about the issue of abortion, it's amazing how many guys get shut down. Any man ever get shut down when you try to talk about abortion? You know, it's a woman's issue, you know, no uterus, no say, which really that phrase didn't age well because now anybody can own a uterus, I guess, or something. It's so insane. We live in a culture that has such an aversion to the very thing they need to hear so much about. So when I talk about being passionate about the issue of abortion, I have to talk about my past. I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Have you ever been to Lancaster? Home of the Amish. I'm not Amish, for those who, I have been asked that many times. I'm like, well, no. Not Amish. But I love the Amish. My grandparents were Mennonite, which is kind of like Amish light. But not Amish. But I did grow up, you know, whoopie pies, you know, apple dumplings, scrapple I could do without. But anyway, I loved growing up in that culture. And I loved growing up in the family that I grew up in. A tiny little family of 15. Many who would be so easily written off and discarded because we didn't fit the picture of perfection, because we were unplanned. And, you know, if you're going to be unplanned, you're going to be unwanted and unloved. See, life is never, ever picture perfect, and that's what makes it so beautiful.
Life is never picture perfect. Human beings come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and abilities. No matter how much we plan, no matter how much we think we're prepared, the unplanned happens all the time. It's how we respond to the unexpected that shows our true humanity. But many do not see the value of every human life. Too many are willing to discard those who don't fit the picture of perfection. Abortion destroys the chance to love and to be loved. We never know what will fill the frames of our lives or how empty those frames can be when we allow exceptions.
Every life is a gift.
Amen to that? The world doesn't see it that way, but I thank God my parents saw it that way. God sees it that way. My family's filled with those that are the exceptions. The family actually started off like every other family, really small. This is the before picture. 5 Bombergers. These are my parents, Andrea and Henry Bomberger, and the 3 first Bomberger kids, I don't know what you want to call them, the homemade ones. So that is the label that I have for them. At some point, maybe I'll come up with something better. But so there you have the first 5, the original Bombergers. And what's amazing is we've heard the phrase many times in our lives, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? But sometimes you still have to explain the picture. What you don't know from this, and people often ask me, well, what moved your parents to adopt? What motivated them? Sometimes you hear the subtext to it. It's more like, what possessed your parents to adopt 10? Well, 2 things, love and brokenness. What you can't tell from this picture is that my mom grew up with an alcoholic father who was emotionally and psychologically abusive. And so at the age of 5, my mom was placed in a children's home while her parents separated. And it was during that time that God got a hold of her heart, because her heart was broken because another little girl there who had disabilities had no one to visit her, no one to hold her, no one to come and say, I love you. At least my mom had her mom and her dad visit her separately, but no one came to see that little girl. And isn't it amazing how we underestimate kids? The way that they receive and the way they perceive the world. So at the age of 5, my mom remembers getting down on her knees and saying, God, help me be a mommy to those who don't have one. And that is where the heart for adoption began. And she met the most amazing man I've ever known, my dad, who was on the same page, because if you're going to adopt 10 kids, you should probably be on the same page. Just saying. But here's the first moment. The first moment that really just changed so much of their lives when they held me. This is the first kiddo. I was the first one adopted. I was 6 weeks old. My parents had no idea what this all meant. See, my mom still tried to connect with with her father, knowing that he was broken, knowing that his only hope of wholeness and healing was through Jesus. So she never gave up on him. He was involved with the original 5 Bombergers. But the moment they talked about adopting me, I don't know if you notice, I'm brown. I'm going to clean up the language, but he said to her, if you bring that black child into your home, you're going to ruin your family. And so my mom literally had to lose a father in order to gain a son. So the moment that they adopted me, he had nothing to do with our family. He missed out on 13 amazing grandkids who would have loved him and he could have loved us. I will say that my parents chose well. They chose me. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Just saying, my mom is incredible. And when I talk about the beauty of possibility, you have to talk about the beauty of sacrifice, but not the way that the world understands sacrifice. It's the beauty of self-sacrifice. See, our culture is so willing to sacrifice others. Any parent here ever sacrificed for your kids? By show of hands. Only this side? Never? Okay, maybe I just missed your hands. We do it all the time, and kids don't really appreciate it until they're like 25, 30, 35, something like that. But we sacrifice all the time. Self-sacrifice unleashes purpose. And I think of my parents and how much they loved us. You know, the pro-lifers who don't care about people after they're born, that's a bumper sticker mantra. It is so meaningless. Of course we care about people after they're born. That's what we do. My dad cared about people after they're born. In fact, my dad was a father to those that many others abandoned. My favorite man on the planet. You can see in this graphic, it's my dad holding me, I was 1. And you can see that the words here say, color isn't what binds us, love is. That really has been the storyline of our family's life. And to have a dad who loved Jesus, and when you love Jesus, the natural outflow of that is loving people. And my dad, I know not everyone can say this about their dad, but my dad was the same man at home as he was outside of the home. What's really hard for me is that I lost my father during the height of COVID. He passed away on the anniversary, no less, of Roe v. Wade in 2021, January 2021. My dad's life redeems that day for me. His faith, his love, they redeem it for me. And this is actually his headstone, and I love the verse. This is my life verse. My mom did an amazing job with this because this, to me, encapsulates what their lives have been. My mom is still alive. She's still unleashing purpose. But you can see here, 1 Corinthians 16, 13, 14 says, be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. And do everything with love. That's kind of a tall order, right? It's not easy. I feel like my dad did that really well. And he survived 13 teenagers. I mean, anybody ever raised 13 teenagers? One teenager can kill you, I'm just saying. But see, my parents shattered this myth that is actually the DNA of the abortion industry, that says unplanned equals unwanted equals unloved. It's so untrue. But in order to actually justify violence against a group of human beings, you have to dehumanize them. And that's what the whole phrase unwanted child does. That somehow, if you're unwanted, it can justify horrific things being done to you. I thank God my parents didn't believe in the unwanted child. In fact, here's an old article from way back when, and I love that the journalist got it. They understood that adoption in the article doesn't just change the child, it changes the family, it changes the community, and sometimes it changes the world. And so you can see in this article, when we were still a small family of 8, I'm the one down there in the middle with the big collar. Oh, I was a handful. Handful. Any of you ever have a strong-willed child or currently, well, if you currently have a strong-willed child, please don't raise your hands. This is not a, I'm going to take a poll here, but sometimes you just don't know what to do with that strong-willed, stubborn stuff, and you feel like sometimes it's going to kill you. I would just encourage you, hold on for about 25, 30, 35 years. A long time, yes, and it will turn into something really constructive. I am a testament to that, just telling you. But this article, the title from me just says it all. Quote, unwanted children, unquote, find their wanted. See, there's no such thing as an unwanted child. Maybe unwanted by biological parent or parents, but there's truly no such thing as unwanted. We're all wanted by someone. And we were wanted by Andrea and Henry Bomberger, my parents. Whew, if they had known what they're getting into with just me, I don't know. Every year there's like a new flavor added to the family. Seriously, there was like, we're white, black, Native American, Vietnamese, able, disabled. Obviously went well after they adopted me, so it just kept going. And so here are all of my siblings, all 13 Bomberger kids. You can see, obviously, we don't look alike. Although I always say, like, almost everybody in the picture has an afro. I'm just saying, it was the time. It was awesome growing up, too, in a small, well, it's not small, but a farmhouse in Lancaster County where we had, now think about this, 1.5 bathrooms. 1.5 bathrooms, 15 people. We survived. I can't even imagine growing up in any different situation. We were loved like crazy. I mean, we had a lot of fun. And when there were fights, not that I ever started any of them, but when there were fights, it wasn't just like one person against one person. It was more like tag team. And unfortunately, I was on the losing side. It was usually like 10 against 1. But it was, now people think, 15 or 13 kids, 15 in a family, it was chaos. It really wasn't chaos. Because most people in my family are actually kind of quiet and mellow. I'm kind of a middle child. Anybody a middle child in here? Sometimes you just need to be heard. I'm just saying. But I will tell you, growing up, we have so many crazy memories and just being loved. And I'm just so thankful for parents who poured Jesus into us. In fact, the world had all these narratives for us. Well, this child won't amount to this. This child won't be able to do that. It's amazing what happens when you're loved, because all of the expert opinions are meaningless. Adoption unleashed purpose in our family. Love unleashed purpose. And I'll tell you, growing up in this mixed sort of environment, one of the most powerful things we learned is this, and it's one of the foundational tenets of the Radiance Foundation. We are one human race. Can I get an amen in here? One human race, and this is not a call to be colorblind. I know people mean well when they say, well, we should be colorblind. God's a colorful God. But he created color for us to enjoy and to celebrate, never to separate ourselves by it. So in case you need to check some things scripturally, Acts 17:26 is a good place to start. From one blood, he created us all. It's amazing. God creates beautiful distinctions. Humans craft baneful divisions. We take whatever God makes. I was like, oh, here's a reason to separate ourselves. No. So one of the most powerful things I learned growing up, that and eating really quickly if you wanted seconds, but I'm just saying. But I want to show you now what a picture of unwanted looks like. So when you hear that phrase, unwanted child, I don't know if there's an image that comes to mind, but if there is one, hopefully this one will replace it. This is what supposedly unwanted looks like. It's my entire family, my brothers, my sisters, their spouses, and their children. There's only one extended family member, grandma, in the middle of the picture. But this is what unwanted looks like. That's 64 strong. And what's crazy is that was taken 7 years ago. It's the last time all of us were in one place. There have been 15 more lives added through new marriages, new births, and adoption. So when the world says you can't do this, but yet God's called you, guess what? He's going to equip and enable you to do it. People often ask my mom, well, how? How did you do that? And her answer is always the same. It's God. We look at circumstances often and we think, I could never go through that. I could never do that. Well, then you're diminishing the fact that God is the God of the impossible. Philippians 4:13 says what? I can do some things through Christ. No, I can do what? All things. Even raising some difficult children like I was. I'm still on my apology tour, by the way. I still have about 5 more years left. But this picture is possible because of parents who rejected the naysayers, parents who knew that they were called to love. This picture is also possible because of courageous birth moms, women who chose to be stronger than their circumstances. We live in a culture that says, women are, the future is female, women are everything. But yet, somehow when it comes to the unplanned, women aren't strong enough. They can't overcome. Are you kidding? Now, I've never met my birth mother. And as a creative, for years, I tried to figure out if I ever would see her face to face, what would I say to her? Because that's really all I want. I never wanted a relationship with my birth mom, because sometimes we get a talk show sort of mentality that the adoptee is incomplete unless he or she has this direct connection. All I really wanted to do was just thank her. So I wanted to get my master's degree before I did that. And then I felt like if I would see her, I could say, look, here are some of the things that I was able to do in my life. So at one point, I wrote a song called Meant to Be. And it's just basically a tribute to her for going through 9 months of a traumatic pregnancy. And then several years ago, I thought, well, what if I showed visually all the things I've been able to become in my life by the grace of God because of her singular decision? What would that even look like? And so I wrote the lyrics, I sang the lyrics, kind of a little jingle here. And I thought, even if I don't ever meet her face to face, that maybe some way, somehow, online, she might see this. And so I put together this piece. I guess you could say it would be kind of the conversation I would have with her, a tribute to a very courageous birth mom.
You couldn't see what I would be. It wasn't part of your plan. Stronger than your circumstance. You gave my life a chance. Touching the future before it began. You're the reason I am here. I know deep down in my soul, my life has purpose. I know deep down in my soul, my life has purpose.
I am literally the 1% that's used 100% of the time to justify abortion. But we have to understand, especially as Christians, the circumstances of our conception never change the condition of our worth. Who gives us worth? I mentioned this earlier. Who gives us our worth? And that's one of the myths I love being able to shatter. I love that God's giving me this ability to create, to write, so that I can just shred some of these lies. This myth that wantedness equals worth. Of course it doesn't. Of course, Planned Parenthood thinks that's the case. In fact, one of their first slogan was, every child a wanted child. This is actually a brochure from the late 30s. And in this, it's about birth control, but in the middle panel, they're asking, well, is birth control an abortion? And Planned Parenthood, which was rooted in this racist pseudoscience called eugenics, racist and elitist pseudoscience, once in a while actually did speak the truth. And in this middle panel, when it's asking, is it an abortion? They say abortion kills life after it has begun. They knew that in 1938, but they don't know that in 2023. I mean, we heard all through COVID, abortion is healthcare, it's essential healthcare. So while American businesses were shut down, what remained open? Abortion mills all across the country. Abortion is healthcare, they kept saying. Sure, if abortion is healthcare, then slavery was job care.
Yeah.
I like bringing context, I'm a factivist, you know. I mean, during COVID, where they're talking about, we're the leading healthcare provider, what they provided was the violence of abortion. In fact, they did 30,000 more abortions in 2020 at the height of COVID. But what didn't they provide? Actual medical services. In fact, 200,000 less breast exams and pap tests combined. But they did manage to do 30,000 more abortions. Abortion's what they do. And that's why I love illuminating just the ridiculousness of today's fake feminism. And sometimes with our 4 kiddos, we pull them in different ways in the work that we do through the Radiance Foundation. I have 2 boys, 2 girls, and I want my girls to understand they never have to demean the boys to elevate themselves. And the boys never have to demean the girls to elevate themselves. And I don't want my girls to ever embrace what I call fake feminism. So I had my youngest daughter, Aaliyah, who loves to sing. I had her join in this jingle. Because sometimes you just have to point out the lunacy of what's going on around us. Sometimes you do have to laugh, even though it's painfully ridiculous. And so here's your first jingle. I don't know if you've ever heard a jingle about fake feminism, but here it is.
They love to tell ya, abortion's so good for ya. Just pay your fee and get equality. Their fraud's extensive, their lies defenseless. Planned Parenthood's been counting for a century. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. They don't want you to know. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. All they want is your dough.
This is basic health care.
Thousands of women die before Roe every year.
We're not political. Planned Parenthood, we're nonpartisan.
Planned Parenthood is fake feminism. Fake feminism. Fake feminism. They don't want you to know. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. It's fake feminism. All they want is your dough.
So there you have it. There's a lot of that going around. I just want to talk about this myth. I want to shred this myth right here. Pregnancy centers are fake clinics. I love the work that pregnancy centers do. There are over 2,700 across the country. My wife and I actually met at a planning meeting for a pregnancy center fundraiser. I was actually the lead singer at that time in the group, and we locked eyes. It was a love at first sight. I mean, anybody here fall in love at first sight? Maybe I shouldn't ask that question, because if you're the only spouse raising... Don't want to cause marital strife here, but it was a love at first sight situation, and it's just amazing that God has woven us together with pregnancy centers and the work that we do through Radiance Foundation. But I want to play a clip, because there is an aggressive attack on these centers which display the beauty of compassion in incredible ways. And so you might recognize her, but she has something to say. Just listen to what she has to say.
In Massachusetts right now, those crisis pregnancy centers that are there to fool people who are looking for pregnancy termination help outnumber true abortion clinics by 3 to 1. We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country. You should not be able to torture a pregnant person like that.
Okay, 3 things to unpack here really quickly. 1, yes, it is a great thing that pregnancy centers outnumber abortion mills. Can we just get an amen and hand clap for that? Secondly, I think the word that she was looking for, it's not pregnant people, it's women. Can we say it all together? Women. How many men here have been pregnant? Okay. Women who are beautifully and biologically different. I'm so tired of the erasure. I mean, the American breastfeeding organization is now saying that we have to use the word chest feeding because we need to be inclusive. And they said that sometimes there are issues with men chest feeding. Of course there are issues because we're not biologically designed. I mean, the amount of mental and rhetorical acrobatics people have to go through. Okay, and then the third part is the torture part. So I'm sorry, there are children in here, but I feel like I have to show this image. This is the torture she's talking about. Yes, you can get material assistance, millions of items given for free, especially through parenting classes like Earn While You Learn, a Bright course. This is the torture she's talking about, that women and men who run these centers pour their lives into those facing the unplanned. And they want to shut these centers down. I mean, then what does pro-choice mean? Because the only option that so-called pro-choice activists want is the violence of abortion. They don't understand the beauty of possibility that is within all of us because of a God who created us fearfully and wonderfully. Psalm 139 doesn't have an asterisk that says, oh, wait, no, only if you're humanly planned. We're all fearfully and wonderfully made, which is why I love talking about the possibility quotient. Anybody have your intelligence quotient measured at one point in your life, your IQ? Does anybody remember having your IQ measured back in the back there? You remember? Was it a good day for you? No. They're not even accurate, so don't internalize that. I'm just saying. But just think about it. How often do we underestimate what we're able to do? And we know as Christians that it's not on our own strength. But just by a show of hands, how many have ever done more than you ever thought you could do? You blew your own mind. You exceed. Okay, good. All right, the other half will have a self-esteem seminar afterward for you. But I mean, we were designed as overcomers. I've lived it. Many of us could tell stories about how God has made us overcomers. And so I just want to give you some examples of two individuals who have been written off because, no one should ever grow up in poverty. Well, greatness has arisen out of poverty. No one should ever grow up in the foster care system and experience that trauma. Greatness has arisen from that system as well. It's amazing what we are so quick to write off. This individual was adopted and loved. We've all been impacted. When I mentioned earlier about how sometimes adoption changes the world, this little guy was adopted and loved, and when he grew up, in his biography, he wrote that he went to see his birth mom, and he said he wanted to tell her, thank you that I didn't end up an abortion. When he passed away, I wrote about him. His name is Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. Changed, and you see the title here, Steve Jobs changed the world, adoption changed his. And what's really awesome is you look at these pictures, his baby picture and then his adult picture, and I like to Photoshop the mess out of things, but I did not Photoshop the picture on the left. It was almost like God knew. He's like, raise it up. Next individual, we have all seen this little one who grew up, ended up in the foster care system. She and her sibling were adopted, actually rescued by her grandparents, ended up becoming someone that we have all seen at the Olympics. Her name is Simone Biles, the world's most decorated Olympic gymnast. And what I need to say here is that, sadly, last summer during, just on Instagram, she was talking about abortion and then just basically said that she's pro-abortion, that no child should go into the foster care system and experience that trauma. I'm like, you are the tangible example of the beauty of possibility. And I will say to anybody who says, well, no one should have to experience that. Well, we don't want people to experience trauma. And we live in a culture right now that wants trauma always as like the resting place. Trauma shouldn't be the resting place. It should be a reference point because God, rescues and redeems all the time. But no one, all my siblings, including myself, were adopted, except for my one sister who's from Vietnam. We were adopted out of the foster care system. We weren't better off dead. We were all better off loved. And so we just need to pray for Simone Biles that God gets a hold of her heart. But honestly, these situations, these individuals and many more, their achievements don't give them worth. But the fact that they're created in the image of God, that's what gives them worth. Equal and irrevocable worth. And honestly, I could tell you story after story of being stronger than our circumstances. And the last one I'm going to tell you, and it shatters this myth, Pregnancy is the end of your life. This is what so many young women hear. And we know this deeply and personally in our family. My wife knows this, actually. Her last 3 years of teaching were in inner city Philly, and in her late 20s, she was in just an abusive relationship, walked away from the relationship, and she had walked away from the Lord too. She had just become numb, but walked away from this relationship only to find out that she was pregnant. And so in her late 20s, she's feeling all the shame. You know how the devil loves to operate in shame, right? That's not how God operates. But she remembers, now this isn't the ultrasound from that day, but this is a later ultrasound, but it was on Valentine's Day, February 14th. She goes in for an ultrasound appointment by herself. The biological father wanted the baby aborted. Her fellow teacher said, just abort it, just abort it. Bethany refused. She never considered abortion, but she felt so incredibly ashamed. And when she saw that ultrasound, she remembers just God wrapping his arms around her as she felt like she was just wrapping her life around her baby girl. And even if she had to be a single mom the rest of her life, she never wanted her daughter to know that shame. And so when she went home that night, I love when she tells it because it's, of course, I'm the one that just cry every time she shares it. She goes home that night, has her journal, and in the margin, the verse Psalm 34, 4 and 5, which say, and I sought the Lord, and he relieved me of all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant, and they are never covered with shame. So for all the people, her coworkers who thought they were being compassionate, who said just abort it, they didn't realize that baby girl already had a name. In fact, from that verse, Bethany named that baby girl Radiance. She's the reason for the name of her organization. Yep.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABC. Now time on to me.
Good job. Give me 5.
It's amazing how God changes narratives all the time. This is actually the day of our wedding. I married the love of my life, and I became an instant dad. Ray Ray was just 1, and I officially became her dad when she was 5. We adopted 2 of our 4 children. So we adopted 1 child in 1 courtroom, and 2 hours later, another child in Atlanta. I was ugly crying that day. It was ridiculous. I love how God changes the trajectory of our lives. These are my kiddos today. On the left, my youngest daughter, Aaliyah, my oldest daughter, Ray Ray, Radiance, my oldest son, Makai, and my youngest son, Justice. I think of my birth mom's courageous decisions so many years ago and the beautiful reverberations that actually will last for generations. And these, to me, they're the most beautiful reverberations. So if you don't remember much of what I've said tonight, hopefully you remember this, because this is so true. Some of the best things in life are unplanned. And the last thing I want to leave you with is my youngest daughter. She was about 11 years old, she wouldn't sing in front of anybody else. You know when you try to show off your child to somebody, and you're like, hey, Bobby, do this, and Bobby just freezes, and you look like an idiot. Well, that would be Aaliyah, never wanting to sing in front of anybody else. But she heard me create that video that you saw of all the things I've been able to become in my life, and she loved the music. She said, oh, Daddy, I love that song. Can I sing to it? I'm like, yes, come sing. So we have this little studio. I mean, at 11, girl comes up with her own harmonies. And she's now 14, but at 11, she comes up with her own harmonies. And she said, well, what should I sing? I said, well, sing whatever comes to mind. So she thought, I'll just do a little rendition of This Little Light of Mine. So she's singing, I'm crying, because I'm thinking, she wouldn't even exist if my birth mom hadn't chosen to be stronger than her circumstances. So, yes, sappy dad me, I'm crying, and she's singing, and it's just amazing what God can do.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little
we let the light of God's love shine, oh my goodness, it changes everything. When we refuse to see through the broken lenses of the world, but through the breakthrough filter of Christ, we enable lives like mine and my family to be possible.
Well, I hope you have found this discussion not only inspiring, but also informative. Christians have to be able to think, especially in this constantly changing culture, from a Christian worldview. To learn more and to find more discussions, please visit lighthousevoices.org. That's lighthousevoices.org.